In session 1 of the Fiji for Beginners workshop, we are going to cover installation of Fiji, how to import images into and also manipulate images within Fiji. This includes duplicating, splitting and merging colors, using region of interest tools, and cropping images in preparation for figures. Okay, the first thing to cover is how to install Fiji. Now there's a bit of question about Fiji, ImageJ, the difference between the names. So Fiji stands for Fiji is just ImageJ. Basically, it's an updated version of ImageJ which allows the software to automatically update any plugins that you may have downloaded onto your Fiji platform. Previously, you would have had to manually install and things like that. So you can download Fiji from fiji.sc. There are instructions there on how to download it and install. One really important thing we find is you need to install it on a drive that you have admin rights over. So if you're working on a university computer, you may not have admin rights within the program files. You might have to install it on the desktop or somewhere like that. One of the really powerful things about Fiji is the number of plugins that it has available for researchers. So these are tools that have been generated by researchers for specific functions which other people can use. Now we don't use a lot of these in the Fiji for Beginners or Fiji for Quantification workshop, and that's because they're fairly specific to different types of workflows. But it's worth going through and having a look. Now the first time you open Fiji, or every time you open Fiji, it will ask you, do you want to update the software? So for the moment, click not at the moment, but you will want to do that on a regular basis. So what it will do is it will go through and update any new updates, but it will also launch the manage update sites. So this is different plugin sites where people are developing their own plugins and allowing people to download them and install them within Fiji. So you can see a picture of this down here in the bottom left hand corner. We've got a number of different plugins that are available to us. We can select these and then they'll be updated regularly every time we update Fiji. If you want to do this any other time, you can go to Fiji Help Update and it will do that for you. Okay, the first thing to cover is how to open Fiji and how to import files. So just to add a layer of confusion, I'm using a Mac, whereas you guys might be using a PC, but I'll try to point out the relevant shortcuts as we go through. One important thing is to first of all have Fiji open. I'm also going to make sure that I've got the Fiji for Beginners demo data sitting at the side here where it's a bit more accessible to me. Okay. So there are a number of ways that we can import data into Fiji. So first of all, we can go to File, Open. We could go to the Beginners in the desktop, Demo Data, and we can find a file in here. So say for example this one, and that will open up that file immediately for us. I hardly ever use that. Mostly I use the drag and drop version. So here's that same file. If I left click and hold, drag that across onto this bottom area, you can see on the left hand side it says drag and drop. If I now release, that will open up the file. What you want to avoid is dragging a drop onto the desktop or anywhere where it doesn't say drag and drop. That just means you'll copy that file onto the desktop. Okay, so you'll see opening up a TIFF file just automatically opens up that image. If we go through and try and find a different file format, say for example a Leica file, this is a .lif file, we can again drag and drop this, but now it brings up this dialog box. And this is what we call the bioformats import options. So this is Fiji using something called bioformats to read the Leica file extension and be able to open that. So bioformats work out a way of being able to open up all the different companies' file formats and open that up within Fiji or some of the other softwares as well. So this gives us a lot of different options in terms of how we want to open up these images. So for example, we can have Hyperstack, you can open up just the metadata. If you're old school, you can go to standard ImageJ. Mostly I use Hyperstack here. You can display metadata, and that will open up a separate window as well as your image window that has the metadata. Down the bottom here we can hit split channels, split focal planes, or split time points. Just be wary doing this that if you have 100 time points and you hit split time points, you'll end up with 100 images open within Fiji, and you'll soon learn what the close all function is within Fiji. Some other things to bear in mind is if you have very large data sets, obviously you might not be able to load in tens of gigabytes into the RAM on the system. We can use the virtual stack option, in which case it only opens up the image plane that we're currently looking at. We have color mode down here, so we can change and customize different color modes. You'll see every time you select something on the right, over here there's an information pane that tells you a bit more information about it. One other thing to be wary of is this auto scale button. So if we activate this, it's going to auto scale the intensity scale, so it's actually going to change the data. Make sure this is unticked if you're doing quantitative analysis. Yeah. Now we go OK. Now with the Leica files, we can have multiple images within one file. So in this case, we've got 3 different images. They all have 3 channels. They're all 1024 by 1024 pixels. We can select the ones we want and go ahead and click OK. So your first activity will be to go through and practice the image import. So test out how to open a number of different files using the file open and also the drag and drop functions. Try playing around with files with different file extensions and see how they open. And then you can also play around with some of the options within bioformats, import options, so for example split channels, auto scale, color modes, and display metadata. That's activity 1, and these are all the activities are in the handout sheets which you should have downloaded along with the demo data. The next thing we're going to look at is what information we can glean from an image just from opening it. So to do this, I'm going to open the omx.dv file. Oops. There we go, just took a while. And I'm just going to rescale that so we can see. Okay, so in this, without even looking at the image, if we look at the header up in the top of the image here, we can actually start to see a lot of information about what's contained within this data. So for example, we know that we've got 2 channels and we're currently sitting on channel 1 of 2. We also know that this has Z-stack information and it's got 54 Z slices and we're sitting on channel 1. It tells us the physical dimensions of the image, so this is almost 41 by 41 microns, and that's made up of 1024 by 1024 pixels. It's a 32-bit image, and the file size is 432 megabytes. Now if I open up another image for contrast, so let's go with the 6colored.czi. Let's just go with the normal image. So in this case, we've only got one set of parameters, so we've only got channels in this one. You can see in the bottom hand corner, we've got C, which represents channels, and we can scroll through our 6 different channels within this one image. So this is what we call a stack. It only has one parameter, so channels or time. The omx.dv image is what we call a hyperstack, so it has multi-parameters. So again, if you see at the bottom, we've got channels, which we know there are 1 of 2, and we've also got Z-stacks, so we know we've got 54 Z-stacks as well. So if I scroll into the middle, you can start to see some of that data coming through from channel 1, and then we can also flick over to channel 2 and look at some of that data as well in channel 2. Fiji has a lot of different functions. Sometimes it's very hard to find them, so if you look in some of the menus, there's sub-menus, and then things go deeper and deeper. You could spend a long time looking around trying to find all these. You should find, if you've downloaded the latest version, that there is a command finder. So if we want to know how to duplicate an image, we can type it in there. It will tell us a path to it. We can select the right one and then hit run. I mentioned earlier on, if you accidentally open up 100 images rather than clicking through all of them, you can go to File, Close All, which is Control-Shift-W on a PC or Command-Shift-W on a Mac. The other thing we need to watch out for is what our image type is. So at the moment, we've got an image type. As I mentioned, our image is a 32-bit. In some of the examples where we're playing around with color, when we're saving something that we want to use in Word or PowerPoint, we're probably going to need to convert that to an RGB color. So just remember your final step before you're saving. If you want to use it in Microsoft Office, you should save your image type RGB color. One of the other tools we use quite a lot are stacks, which can be found under Image, Stacks, and this allows us to take something like this Z-stack and convert that into individual images. So again, if you want to split out into individual Z-stacks, you can do that using that tool as well. In terms of screen real estate, so you notice I already resized this image. We're doing that just using the plus and minus buttons on the keyboard to make things a bit smaller. Also, before you make any modifications to things, I normally recommend that you duplicate them. So make sure Fiji always works on active windows, so make sure you've got the window you want active, and then you can go to Image and Duplicate, Control-Shift-D or Command-Shift-D, or again you can right click and duplicate on the image itself as well. Let's just show you that. Comes up asking you to give it a file name. Do you want to duplicate the hyperstack, or do you want to remove one of the channels, etc. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to play around with color. Okay, so we're going to use the Fiji image color. I'm going to use these 4 tools at the top here. So split channels, merge channels, arrange channels, and channels tool. Activity 2 is splitting channels. In this we'll show you how to split an RGB merged image into separate red, green, and blue images. Open up this bpae.tiff image, again just drag and drop. So this is an image of 3 channels, and the channels have been colored in the blue lookup table, the green lookup table, and the red lookup table, and it's an RGB image here. So in this case what we're going to do is we're going to split out these 3 colors into individual images. So this will only work if the images come in that blue, green, red format. If you've got magenta in there, that's not going to work. Okay. So we're going to use image, color, split channels. And now you can see we've got our blue, our green, and our red channel separated out. Now again, another little hint, if you can't see them all, if you go to Window and hit Tile, that will rearrange it so you can see the different channels on your screen. Now again, if you want to save these out, at the moment they're 8-bit, so we probably need to go into Image, RGB color. Before we go, File, Save As, and we're going to save that as a TIFF file. And in this case, I'm just going to save it onto the desktop. Okay, so that's going to save that as a grayscale image. What if we wanted to put the color back? How would we do that? So in that case, we're going to use a lookup table, which is under Image, Lookup Tables, and then some of the standard ones are situated here, the red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, yellow. In this case it's the green, so let's hit green to that one. Again, we're going to convert that to an RGB color file, so here RGB color, before we save that out again as a TIFF file. Now you could go through and do the same thing for the blue channel. Okay, so that's how you can take a merged image which has been acquired with the red, green, blue channels and split those out into individual channels. So that is activity 2, and again those instructions are in your handouts. Activity 3 is merging channels. So in this case, we're going to take individual channels and merge them into an RGB image. In this case, we're going to open up the BPAE folder and highlight all 3 BPA blue, green and TIFF images to use in this activity. We can drag and drop these all at the same time. Again, they're sitting on top of each other, so let's go to Window, Tile, just to make that a bit easier for us to visualize. And in this case, we want to merge these channels back together again. So to do that, we're going to go to Image, Color, Merge Channels. Now here we've got 7 of the commonly used lookup tables. So blue has been assigned to blue, green has been assigned to green, and red has been assigned to red. What if we don't want that red? If you remember from the earlier talk, we want that to be magenta. In this case, we don't want to create a composite. You can keep the source images just in case you feel like you're going to mess up. And if you hit OK, we now have that blue, green, magenta image that we had previously. It's already an RGB file, so we don't need to convert that. We can just go Save As, TIFF, and say rename to whatever you want, and save that onto the desktop. Okay, so nice and easy. That's how to take 3 individual channels and merge them into the same single image. Now the channels need to be the same physical size for that merge to happen. Okay, so let's close all those files. Activity 4 is rearranging channels. So in this case, we're going to use these 6 colors CZI file, which we've already looked at. So here we've got 6 different channels. So your annoying boss doesn't like the order in which you've acquired the data and wants you to rearrange the order. How would you do that? Again, we're going to use this image color tool. And this time we're going to use arrange channels. So in this example, our old setup, each one of those images is given a number, and we can designate the new order underneath. So if we want to go backwards, we can go 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or you can go 1, 2, 3, 6, 5, 4, however you want to order them. As soon as you click OK, it's going to reorder those images into the order that you've designated. Again, you can then save that, go away, and use that as well. Another way of doing this is under stacks, tools. This is a region I come in quite a lot to rearrange and remove individual slices from multi-channel images and things like that. So there's stack sorter, slice remover, slice keeper, stack splitter, interleave. So lots of different tools there for playing around and reordering and removing individual channels that you might be interested in. Activity 5 is again using the color tools. In this case we are going to change the channel lookup table and merge an RGB but within a stack. So we're not going to split the channels out, recolor them and then bring them back. We're going to keep it within a stack. So for this we're going to use the Zeiss.lsm image. So here we've got 3 channels and we want to change the colors that those are shown in. So in this case we're going to use the channels tool, which is Control-Shift-Z on a PC or Command-Shift-Z for a Mac. And then this brings up this dialog. So as long as we're on color, we can toggle between the different channels. If we go to more, we can actually change what the lookup table is. So let's change, for example, the red channel into green. And then let's maybe make this magenta. And then we'll keep the nuclei in blue. Okay. So once we're done with that, we can go into composites. That will show the merge of those. And then we can go in, hit convert to RGB. That's using the lookup tables that we've now defined. Create an RGB image. So again, all we need to do now is go in File, Save As, TIFF to finalize that. So that's a really useful tool if you don't want to split out a stack. You want to do all the different changes within the stack. You can use the channels tool, which is under Fiji, Image, Color, Channels tool, Control-Shift-Z or Command-Shift-Z. Let's close those. The next thing we want to look at are region of interest tools. So I'm just going to open up something like bpae.tiff for this. So the region of interest tools are all up in the top left-hand corner here. We have rectangle tools, oval or elliptical tools, polygon selections, freehand, and line tools. Anytime you see a little red triangle here, that means there are more options. You can either click on those or right click and that will swap between the different modes. So it's worth having a play around. So for example, line tool, click once and then release, draws a line. If you right click, you can use the segmented line option. Draw, click, draw, click, draw, click, double click to end. In this example, we're going to use the rectangle region of interest. Okay, so again, left click and hold, and you can draw your region of interest that you're interested in. There are a few keyboard shortcuts here, which may be useful. So holding the Shift key and drawing maintains the symmetry, so you'll always get a square image. If you hold the Command and draw, then it gives you a free region of interest around the place where you started. So if you look here, we're in the middle of this nucleus. I'm holding Command, and then I can draw a region of interest with that nucleus stuck in the middle. These are very useful for manually defining regions of interest. One I use quite a bit is to specify the selection size. So edit selection specify down here. And that then allows us to say, okay, I want my region of interest to be 400 by 400 pixels. We can click OK, and then we can move this around to define the regions. This is very useful if you're trying to build a panel. You always want the squares to be exactly the same size. It's easier to use the Edit Selection Specify tool for that one. One thing you will notice is you can't draw more than one image, more than one region of interest on an image at a time. To do that, we need to use something called the Region of Interest Manager, and that is hidden under Analyze, Tools, ROI Manager. Okay, so this allows us to draw a region of interest, add that in, draw a region of interest, add that in, draw a region of interest, add that in. And we can use the show all function to show where we've already drawn on, and there's measure functions as well that we can use, and we'll use some of those in the Fiji for quantification workshop next week. So activity 6 is to go through some of those regions of interest tools. This is allowing us to manually highlight regions of interest within our image. So the first activity is to draw different shaped ROIs using the rectangle tool, the ellipsoid tool, the line tool, etc. Next thing is to try and draw a square region of interest, holding the Shift key whilst you're drawing the ROI. Next one is to specify the size and the position of the region of interest using the Specify Selection tool. Then you can use the ROI Manager to add more than one region of interest onto the image. Activity 7 covers how to restore a region of interest to multiple images and use that to crop those images. For this example, we're going to open up the 3 different channels from the PPAE folder. So we've got the blue, the green, and the red channel. And in this example, let's draw a region of interest over this cell here, and we want to apply the same region of interest onto the other channels to allow us to crop those and make those into a panel. So next thing we're going to do is to go into Fiji, Edit, Selection, and hit the Restore Selection. Now the shortcut for that is Control-Shift-E or Command-Shift-E if you're on a Mac. So now we've got the red channel selected. If I click this, that's then going to restore that region of interest onto that red channel. We can do the same thing for the blue channel, Edit, Selection, Restore Selection. Okay, next step then is if we want to crop down to this region of interest, we're going to use the Crop tool, which is under Image, Crop, or Control-Shift-X. And again, we can do that for each of the channels. And now we've selected what we're going to use to make our figure panel with. Activity 8 is looking at using lookup tables. We use lookup tables to change the color associated with an image or a channel. In this example, we're going to use BPAE green.tiff. Here we've got our grayscale image, and we're going to change this into a different color format, showing different colors for different intensities. So there's 2 ways we can change lookup tables, either under Image, Lookup Tables. We have the list here of the common ones, and some other more specific lookup tables. Or you may also have a drop-down menu here, which is called LUT, which also gives you those options. For my example, I'm going to use fire. And obviously, because we've changed this from a grayscale image into a color image, we now need to change it from an 8-bit image into an RGB image if we're going to export it out and use it in other packages. So now it's RGB. We can File, Save As, TIFF file. Activity 9 is adding in a calibration bar into your image to allow people looking at the data to see what the different colors mean in the lookup table. Let's go back through and open up the BPA green.tiff image, and again we're going to turn this from the grayscale image and apply our lookup table. Again, in this example I'm going to use fire. You can use what you want. And the idea is to put a calibration bar within the image that shows and lets the person looking at it know what all the different colors represent. So to do this, we want to go into Analyze, Tools, Calibration Bar. This brings up this dialog box which allows us to put this calibration bar in either of the 4 corners or at the area that you last selected within the image. We can change the background color, so not black if you're using black text. You can change the label color, the size of the labels, decimal points we don't need because we're on an 8-bit scale here, so 0 to 255 grayscale values. And make sure you untick overlay if you want that burnt into the image when you finally save it. So feel free to play around with these different settings. Once you're happy, hit OK. This then changes this to an RGB image that's burnt in, and you can hit File, Save As, TIFF as before. That brings us to the end of the demonstration part of the session 1 for the Fiji for Beginners workshop. We now have free time for you guys to go through and try all the activities that we've covered. You will find those in the hands-on session PDF that you should have downloaded along with the demo data. As mentioned before, we have multiple members of our team online waiting to answer your questions if you have any. Please use the chat box to raise if you're having any problems, and I'll set you up in a one-on-one breakout room with a member of the team who can hopefully resolve any problems that you're having.